Recording in progress. Recording in progress.
A very good evening to everyone connected with us today.
Recording in progress.
A very good evening to everyone connected with us today.
Recording in progress. Recording stopped. Recording stopped. Recording in progress. Recording stopped. Recording in progress. Recording in progress. Recording in progress. Recording in progress.
Opportunity and inviting me for this FDP. So, as the company has already organized, has already announced that our today's day topic will be around cloud opportunity and inviting me for this FDP.
So we'll talk about that.
So,
What is
as
the relevance of
the company has already organized, has already announced
especially these
that
days when we there is a lot of talk, lot of stress around the
security lot of stress around the security lot of stress around the security around the security. Okay, so when we talk about security, what comes to mind is we need to have our data secure. We need to have some kind of confidentiality around the data. That is, what is meant by confidentiality is there should be no unauthorized those partners. They should have access to the data who are authorized to do so. Otherwise, it becomes something as a data breach. So the confidentiality of data is one of the paramount features in the three pillars of security. We call it as the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So when like next is integrity is like there should be the data should be intact. There should be no alteration, undue alteration which is made to the data. That is, it should not be tampered with. That is integrity, and availability is like as and when required. So it should be available. So what the bad actors or threat actors can do is to like when we say they can compromise these three parameters, that is the confidentiality, integrity, or availability. So confidentiality is like some kind of data exfiltration or data exposure when the data is exposed, or what kind of data is exposed, which is sensitive in nature. So sensitive data is like which holds our PII, that is personally identifiable information, that is, and or it can have say for example your name, date of birth, it can be your credit card number, it can be the social security number, it can be the PAN number or Aadhaar number. So these are all categorized as PII or personally identifiable information, through which that it is that information which binds an identity to an individual. That means the data subject can be identified by that particular data itself. So these are the primary identifiers. Apart from that, there can be also secondary identifiers like your PIN code or your address. So these are some kind of secondary identifiers which need some kind of correlation to find out the actual data subject. Then integrity is when we have, for example, you're sending out an email and you want to ensure that that email is intact, the contents are not has not been tampered with. So that is something you can do with using some kind of hashing methods, or you can use a digital signature to ensure the integrity of the contents of email. So in academic, I've seen like in when you get that new like the question paper from university. So they send along with that some kind of a hash code, and you are required to do a hash matching of the hash code, so that to ensure that the integrity of that code, or that information is maintained. So to maintain integrity, we normally apply hashing technologies. And availability is like when the availability is compromised. For example, there is a denial of service or DDoS attack or a ransomware attack where the bad actors can go and encrypt your data and it is unavailable to the authorized users. So that is again that affects the CIA track, and that can be detrimental to the you can say the business continuity or the functionality of the organization. So how you maintain that security? How you like kind of govern given organization? It can be any organization. It can be a academic institution, a university. It can be a uh, technical institute. It can be multinational corporations. Any institute, you need to have some kind of a governance around that. Governance is like overseeing the. It's like overarching policy which oversees what are the controls you have, whether the controls are getting implemented, and what are the effects of those controls, whether the controls gap or the security is getting strengthened by those controls. And obviously, the cost benefit. You need to work on the business model, so we have to work on the cost benefit analysis. So here we have four different features, like or four different you can say uh, pillars, where we have policies at the forefront, which is a high level document. Policy is like a kind of when you say define vision or mission, so it's a high level statement, or it can be a strategic policy, long term, or it can be short term policy. Then we have procedures which define the process, like what is the process, what is the technology getting used, and the standards are something which are like say industry best practices or the standards, the global standards which are defined by the regulatory bodies. So those standards need to align with the corporate standards. So we need to have these standards should act as a guidance to have known standards. So generally policies, procedures, standards are mandatory in nature, whereas the last one, which is the guidelines, they are kind kind of advisory in nature. They are not mandatory. Means these are the best practices guidelines that these are something to be followed. For example, when you're using your laptop or when you're using a desktop or any kind of internet way which is connected to the network. So it's always the best practice to do some basic hygiene. Hygiene means having that the system patching at regular intervals or proper shutdown and restarts at regular intervals so that the system is patched and it is regularly checking for any kind of security bugs. So guidelines control have contained the best practices. Okay, next we have certain security principles, like where we say the production mechanism. So the production mechanism, like certain principles, like we have called something called defense in depth, abstraction, data hiding, encryption, security boundary. What exactly are they? Let me check. Okay, if you have any question, you can paste in the chat. In case you have any doubt, we can take up the questions. So, what is exactly defense in depth? So, defense in depth is kind of overlapping layers of security, so that if in case one layer fails, so the other is there to protect. It's like a you have a kind of a fort, and around that fort you have certain wells. So the first layer of defense will be some kind of well which will prevent any intruder from entering, and then there will be huge walls around the fort. So that will be, and then there will be a gate. So two or three layers of security one has to overcome to really intrude into the fort. So that's so when we talk about that in a network. So ideally in a network, the first layer of defense is generally a firewall, which is the first layer of defense, followed by some kind of intrusion detection or intrusion prevention system. And then you can also have some kind of hardened host or a bastion host or some uh, kind of a device, which is also you can have some kind of antivirus devices, and then finally at the back end where your data is stored, that should be if it's sensitive in nature. So the general guideline or best practices dictate that it should always be in encrypted format. You should not keep your text sensitive data in any kind of clear text format. So that's why, like say for example, everyone is using uh, net, so you use your credentials to log in. So it's always advised that the password, which is your login credential, username is something which is publicly known, but password is something which is sensitive. So it is always advised to not to write down the password, because when you write it down, so you are kind of compromising. So it should be something you know, like it's a principle, something you know. And then you can add another layer of authentication, which is a kind of multi-factor authentication and by something you have. So, but when you write down a password, you are converting to something you know to something you have. So the password gets compromised. So ideally, you should try to remember the password, or if you want to write it down, like you are not near the numerous passwords, you are using, say, 100 passwords. So it is may not be possibly humanly possible to remember all those passwords. So one method is to use some kind of digital vault to store those passwords. So a best practice is to use there are quite a few free pass and some kind of vaults where you can store those passwords. So because 80 to 90% of the data breach occur because of these passwords, which are either in clear text or they can be easily guessed, or they are something which can be easily inferred by an attacker who has some information around you. Then abstraction is something like which is another important concept in especially the cloud, where we use some kind of virtualization concepts to really have those abstraction, and you do not require actual um, content. Or, for example, you want to enter database, so you may not require the exact the complete information, maybe half of the information. Like, say for example, dual control policies are there, so the information is kind of in a split knowledge concept. And abstraction is something when, especially when the physical resources are kind of virtualized in the abstract format to leverage their power. Then data hiding is another concept where we use data obfuscation. It can be in the form of tokenization, it can be in the form of data masking, or also like there is another concept known as security by obscurity. Then encryption is something which is a very fundamental concept to data security. That it states that the encryption key is the key principle here. Like encryption key should never be shared. The encryption key should not get compromised, especially the private key in the case of asymmetric encryption, or the shared key in the case of symmetric encryption. So encryption is a fundamental concept around security. So we need to have the sensitive data always in encrypted format. So in case it gets compromised, or there is some unauthorized access, but the data will be useless for the attacker because it is in encrypted format. So that's a very important concept in data security. Then security boundary is like some kind of perimeter security where we have a network. So network which is like a closed wall, it's working in a network, and then it goes to the public network like the internet. So there needs to be a kind of a firewall where you're moving from a layer of higher security to lower security. So there needs to be some kind of boundary, a firewall which separates them. However, this concept of perimeter security is getting challenged by a new concept, that is zero trust architecture, where we need to authenticate, we need to check the privileges, check the access every time, or every time access request is there, you need to grant the access user, and there should be no trust. So zero trust means there is no trust, always verify before you're granting any access. So the perimeter or the security concept is getting converted into zero trust, and microsegmentation will be the key feature in zero trust. Okay, then a little about the standards. So these are the various global standards like ISO 27001 to 1737, and they are the ones which provide the guidelines for the organizations. What are the controls they need to, and as well as some kind of standard where we can do a kind of audit map or some kind of gap analysis. So what is gap analysis? You can compare the existing standards or existing controls with a global standard. So the percentage of match will give you the gap analysis. What is the gap in case any additional controls are required? So these are the controls which are, like, say, especially 2701017. These are the ones which were introduced specifically for the cloud, and it included around seven additional controls, especially suited for the cloud. So, what is exactly when we talk about cloud or cloud data? So, it's again, it's a kind of a cloud data center is nothing but a, like, you are connecting to a dedicated data center which you do not own. That is a cloud. So it's like you're going and utilizing the services on rent. So these are the cloud service models. For example, SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS, software as a service or platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. So all of us are using those as, like, say, for example, you're using the Google email. So email is nothing but a SaaS service or software as a service that you're using. And the good part in SaaS is that the end user or the cloud consumer is not really concerned about any of the operating system patches or any kind of infrastructure usage or any kind of security liability. But at the same time, whatever will be the model, like whatever be the service model, whether it's SaaS, PaaS, or IaaS, the consumer is always responsible for their data. That means you, as the user, will always be responsible for the security of the data. So you cannot share this responsibility, or you cannot blame the cloud service provider for any kind of data leakage, because ultimately the legal responsibility comes on the data owner. So it is always the data owner who owns the legal responsibility. Okay, till now, any doubts or any questions? Like, we can take a couple of minutes break and then we can take up any questions if you have. And at the same time, I would like to focus also what is the relevance on of data security, because and the cloud, because data is the cloud is ubiquitous in nature. Like everywhere you are using the cloud services and the usage of cloud, because of the numerous advantages, especially around the scalability, the elasticity, on-demand services, and obviously the cost benefits as well. So, however, there is always a trade-off between the efficiency and the security, because when you're sharing the data outside of your network, so obviously there are more security concerns. So you need to really have kind of a governance around those data, what are the security around that data. So it's a model which has to be properly governed and controlled. At the same time, harnessing the power of cloud computing, harnessing all the advantages which cloud computing offers. Okay, now we move to this data life cycle. What are the various stages in a data life cycle? It starts with create. Like the first step will be on this creating that is, for example, you are preparing a new file, say a Word file. So after that, you may type it or you can paste it, whatever you're doing, like say that is the creation. And then after the creation, you will store it in some location. It can be on the cloud, it can be on premise. Then after storing, you will use it. So where this data security happens, it is during the creation where in the first stage that we classify the data. Classify means what is the category of data. Normally, when you are using a sensitive data, it has to be classified as whether it is sensitive or highly sensitive or confidential, or whether it is public data. So the classification will also occur during the creation. And then when you are storing that data, you can encrypt the data and then store that data. Like if it's sensitive data, so the regulations, especially around, say, if you are in a financial industry or you are in a defense industry, so the regulations always dictate that any kind of sensitive data always needs to be in encrypted format. So need to encrypt that data before any kind of like before you store it, so that the confidentiality of data is always maintained. And that is especially uh, true for the cloud environment, because in the cloud environment, you have a multi-tenant environment. So multi-tenant means the same resources are getting shared between more than multiple users, and hence you can you need to have more controls, and that is more encryption, like use that encryption has to be used more efficiently. Then data news. Data news is like that stage where some data is getting used. For example, it is getting processed in memory, or it is being used by an application. So data is like normally at its most vulnerable part during data news, because generally what happens at data news is done when data is in unencrypted format, when it is in clear text format. So the clear text format, it is in vulnerable stage. However, with the advent of homomorphic encryption, which is still in the development stage, you can use or process the data in encrypted format as well. Then sharing of data is like where suppose you are sending any data through email or through file transfer. So we have various channels to share. Like while sharing the data, again, you can use either some kind of a tunnel, or say virtual private network, VPN, or IPsec, or you can use TLS encryption to really encrypt that data when you are sharing. Because again, during sharing also, it's going out of the secure environment, so that needs to be in an encrypted format. So generally, in a corporate environment, your emails will be a secure mail. That is, you're using some kind of secure mail, for example, a Microsoft Purview, or it can be a proof point, or you can also use some kind of encrypted. This encryption will use generally it is using the TLS standard, which is a combination of asymmetric and symmetric encryption. And once it's done, like once the data is reaches the non-production stage, that is, it's not required for day-to-day operation, it gets archived, or it's in a long-term storage. So again, during archivism, the confidentiality of the data need not be compromised, and it needs to be in encrypted format, especially if it's sensitive data. Many times there is some legal requirement, like say the regulatory authorities say that okay, the data has to be saved for 7 years, 5 years. So various regulations have different requirements. But again, this largely depends on organization. They can store it for longer period, but at the same time, that needs to be respected in respect of the legal requirements of the laws of the land. Then finally, very important is when the data has reached its last stage, and that means it's no longer required, then how you destroy or you sanitize the data. So this destruction should always be done in a way that it doesn't get compromised. For example, many times we throw our documents in a waste, and but at the same time, we do not do a proper diligence around that. Like say, if there is any kind of, for example, some kind of a bill is there, some kind of which has your credit card information, or some kind of document which you do not want. So before throwing that in a waste bin, it's imperative that we do our diligence and we destroy the data, either like you burn it, or you like clear that, so that it's not data cannot be compromised. Otherwise, there is a threat known as dumpster diving. So what the actors or threat actors can do, they can go and dive into the dump, and through that dump they can pull up some information, and that use the information to compromise the credentials, or compromise the security, or some financial information around that. So again, whatever data we are creating, we should ensure that we throughout the data life cycle, this is important. Like the security of the data is the responsibility of a data owner. So everyone, in a sense, is a data owner. We own some of the data. For example, we own the data which belongs to us, our Aadhaar, our PAN, our educational documents. So the security of that data is our responsibility. How to maintain that security, whether there are any copies of that data, and how they are maintained. And when you share your data, for example, you have taken admission or you're working in an organization, so then that data which has you have shared with the organization, it becomes the responsibility of the organization to ensure that that data is confidential. And there are different laws, like say in the Europe we have GDPR, which ensures strict rules around that. In US, we have these laws in different states. In India, we have the data protection bill, which has been introduced, and slowly it will come into effect. So we are getting more and more towards more awareness around that data control, and how we need to uh, ensure the confidentiality of the PIN as personally identifiable information. Because I was reading some story some time back that one of my colleague was a security consultant was out on some had gone to a tea stall and he ordered some snacks, and so the paper or the like on which they were serving those snacks had some credit card information, something of that sort. So at this stage, we need more awareness around what data is to be, and so you cannot blame the vendor for serving that. The owner of the data is more responsible because they should be more careful when they are discarding. So at each stage, whether starting from creation to the last stage, that is destroying the data, one has to be careful around what data is getting shared and how we are getting that is ending the end of the life cycle. So again, the data owner has their own responsibility, and you can delegate the responsibility to various owners. Like say we have data owner, data controller, data processor, data custodian, data steward, data subject. So these are the various roles in the cloud data. So owner will be the one which has the complete ownership, who creates. So data owner and controller are almost the same term. So in the cloud, it's more relevant to use the term data controller, whereas the processor is one who uses or processes the data on behalf of the controller. So during that time, they have temporary responsibility of safeguarding the data when that is getting processed. Data custodian is a person who has been delegated a responsibility by the data owner to safeguard the data and ensure that there are necessary controls around the confidentiality of the data. Data steward is again a role where we who is responsible for like what is the access required and how the access is getting shared between various owners or various users, and to grant those access which is required. And finally, we have the data subject. Data subject is the person whose data is getting shared. So, according to the European Union's GDPR, that is General Data Protection Regulations, it is imperative that you have the consent of the data subject before sharing their data, or you have something called right to be forwarded. If you do not want, you can opt out of that data sharing, and there should be proper consent, right to be forwarded, and there should be a data quality, that is, data should be authentic, and there should be a legitimate use for getting the data. For example, if you are buying a movie ticket, now, if for buying a movie ticket, the site, buying from a website, and then the website asks your parents' name or your date of birth, so that's something which is not required. So again, you have to see whether the data you are sharing is really required or not. So That is again a matter of subject according to the regulations. Whenever you're collecting data, it should be data which is relevant, whether it is required. Okay. Next, we move on to the cloud storage. So we can leverage the like say so much of data now with the advent of AI and ML, where you have generative AI, the agentic AI, where trillions of bits are getting stored. So we need to have more and more of storage capacities. So there is a very close interrelation between cloud storage and AI even because cloud storage has multiplied the data storing capability because in any large models like OpenAI's model like ChatGPT and all, they have trillions of bytes of data, like zillions of bytes of data. And larger the data sample, more accurate will be the model. So you need these kind of cloud storage like SAN, storage area network, or network area storage, volume as well as object storage to abstract the capabilities of physical storage devices into virtual storage devices. So they cloud storage is playing a very significant role in the advancement of AI and hence they are very closely integrated. So with AI ML models also, you need to have am I audible? Sorry, I mean there was a technical glitch or some kind of disruption. Yeah, I'm muted, I think. Am I audible? Ankita Shah. Okay, let me reshare.
Yes, sir. It's audible, sir.
Okay, is the screen visible? Like,
Yes, sir. It's visible now.
okay, that's good. Thank you. Okay, so we were here in the threats. What are the threats which exist or we need to safeguard against? So multi-tenancy is one of the key aspects in the cloud where the physical resources are getting shared by multiple tenants and they may have their own different um, workloads, they may have different objectives. So this is something we need to have proper segmentation of the data. Then unauthorized access, where you can have someone, even from the cloud service provider, they can go ahead and hack the data or there can be improper data access. Then there is something called data sovereignty. Data is where the data is moving. So because we have, you know that in internet data is not stationary, it will keep moving from one region to another. So there is a lot of regulatory compliances which needs to be adhered to, And in case of any kind of non-compliance, that will lead to uh, fines or there can be a liability. So that is again one thing which needs to be safeguarded against. Then finally, then we have the denial of service and distributed denial of service attacks, modification, destruction of data, theft, malware, improper treatment. This is what we discussed during the data lifecycle. Then some of the techniques how you can secure like cloud data in the cloud. So obviously there should be proper identity and access management. Like for example, you're using for your credentials to access your data, or you store it on a Google Drive, on any kind of cloud drive. So how you access that drive, who are the people who are authorized to access that, and whether you have single factor or multi-factor authentication. So these are important aspects which need to be considered when you are designing those access rules. Then data hiding or data obfuscation. So that is masking, tokenization, and anonymization. So masking is like there is some connectivity issue from my end. Sorry for this. Okay, so we were discussing around what are the controls. Is it visible? The screen is visible to everyone? You can share in the chat. Okay, let's move ahead. I think it's working for most of us. So cloud data security technologies, here we have identity access management, data obfuscation, masking, tokenization, anonymization, encryption, data dispersion, and bit splitting, data loss prevention, digital rights management. So masking and tokenization are the ones which are normally used with credit cards. And tokenization is especially important because it also helps in regulatory compliance. Because tokenization is something somewhat of where data gets mapped. And during a credit card process, you do not share your credit card credentials or credit card information with the merchant. Only a token is shared. So in that way, you're able to ensure that your credit card information is secure. Anonymization of data is where you do not want to like reproduce the data. So you what you do is like remove the sensitive information from the data. Then encryption is like converting the data into a format which is not legible or which is uh, doesn't make any sense. So into some characters which are like doesn't make any sense. That is encryption. So like what is known as the ciphertext. You're converting the plain text into the ciphertext using an encryption key and encryption algorithm. So that can be like it can be symmetric, asymmetric, as well as like you can use it for confidentiality. It can be used for integration. It can be used also for non-repudiation. So non-repudiation is something where the user or the sender cannot deny that they have sent that information or they have participated in an event. Data dispersion, bit splitting are two important concepts, like where you kind of disperse or distribute the data or make available copies of data in multiple locations, in more than one location. So that is the data dispersion. And the technique which we use is bit splitting, which is based on eraser coding techniques. So like that's what is data dispersion. The primary purpose of data dispersion in the cloud is to safeguard against any kind of cloud data seizure, so by the regulatory or legal authorities. For example, if some of the tenant is involved in any kind of act which is against the law, so the law can seize that complete hard disk. Now, hard disk may contain the data of more than one tenants, more than one users. So if you have this data secured in more than one location, you can safeguard against these kind of data seizure or data which has been taken by the legal authorities. Then data loss prevention. Okay, data loss prevention is again a very important aspect where any kind of data loss is prevented. Means any kind of data which is going out of the environment is prevented. How you do that's done probably by DLP agents or by those perimeter security. So what you do is like have those agents installed at the endpoints, and endpoint any kind of data which is trying to go out and which is classified as sensitive will be either stopped, either by a block policy, or it can be some kind of a warning being sent that this is a sensitive information which you're sending out. So this is an important aspect of control which should exist in most of the organizations so that any kind of sensitive data information is not shared with unauthorized users. And digital rights management, which is obviously important in the academic world as well. So, I mean, that includes the copyright, the trademarks, the patents, and one is the trade secrets. Then these are the certain rules which have been defined by the cloud e-discovery and forensics. So ISO 27050 is the one which describes these standards. So it starts with identification, collection, examination, and analysis, and includes the chain of custody. So chain of custody is an important concept which has the complete chain from where the data was, who handled the data, at what time, what was the next chain, till the time of getting uh, produced in a court of law. So normally this e-discovery or forensics will be used for legal requirements whenever there is some kind of investigation is being done and how you can complete this investigation. So there will be a specialized forensics team which will be adept in the use of the tools. So you need to have specialized tools which ensure that there is no right activity going on when the data is getting preserved or the data needs to be that's authentic, accurate, complete, convincing, admissible. for the court to accept it as a evidence. Then intellectual property protection, as we discussed, so we have the trademarks, which protect words and simple copyrights, protect creative works. So any kind of say, especially the published papers. So you have those papers, so they are protected by Copyright Act, and so generally the Copyright Act is valid for 70 years after the death of the first author. So it has time bound. If you are using a some kind of data which is say 200 years old, so the Copyright Act may not apply to that data. Then you have patents. So patents are to protect inventions. So again, patents are more, you can say, powerful tool as compared to copyright. Then the trade secrets are some kind of secret recipe. For example, OpenAI is the one who created ChatGPT. So what is exactly the large language model which they used is a trade secret. And obviously that is worth billions of dollars. So obviously they won't share that because that is exactly the module and that is the business model. That is where their business model is working. So that is again that requires secrecy, but they don't expire. So trade secrets are something which will not expire. So then we have various kind of laws like health, HIPAA, which is for US law, then Sarbanes-Oxley Act 2002 is for publicly traded companies. Leach-Bailey Act is for ensuring the privacy of financial organizations. And then you have overarching GDPR law, that is General Data Protection Regulation Act from European Union, which is also serving as the guiding principles for most of the data protection laws around the globe. And quite a few of the tenets of the features have been taken from GDPR and the data protection law, which is getting enacted in India. Okay, I think that is like just to kind of introduction to the various tenets of cloud and the cloud data security, how what are the various roles in data security, what are the various stages of data security, then how you can, what are the various methods, as well as cloud e-discovery and forensics. So to try to like cover in a succinct format, kind of brief introduction to the cloud data and the security. So at this stage, I would like to encourage questions, or if you have anything in the chat, please go ahead and share. Okay, I think there is a attendance link. Okay, nice. So in the meanwhile, I have framed a few questions, so you can do your own scoring. For example, the first question is here: who is responsible for the data content, context, and the associated business rules? You can share your answer in the chat. Just you type A, B, any like 1A or 2A, whatever it is. Okay, I've got 1A. This is for Jitendra. This is for answer question one. Yeah, exactly. So data controller and the data owner which are sometimes used interchangeably, are the ones who really are responsible for creating the content and as well as the associated business rules. So whether data is to be classified, so the classification of the data is also done by the data owner. So this classification will be done according to the business use case. So it is the business requirements which will dictate whether a data is classified as uh, confidential, secret, or sensitive, or whether it can be publicly shared. So the first answer will be A, data owner. Second is which form of data destruction reduces the chance of recovery of data remnants. Data remnants is something like you kind of do some kind of data clearing or some kind of try to clean up the data, and then after cleaning up the data, there is some remnants data is remaining or some parts of the data are remaining, which can be retrieved by some forensic analysis. So, which of these techniques will reduce the chance? Most of you, oh, someone has answered F. F is not an option. Someone has, most of you have answered D. I can see one A, someone has answered A. Some one answer was F. F is not an option. Okay, there was a trick in this question. So it reduces the chance. So what happens is when you destroy the data, say for example, by methods of incineration or as I mentioned, if you are, say for example, you're written a data on a piece of paper, then you burn that paper. So that is like some kind of a destruction. So when you burn that paper, so you are eliminating the chances of recovery. You're not reducing the chances. So the question says reduces the chances. So reduction of the chances because in security we try to reduce the probability. So it has to be yes, it is B. That is purging. So what is purging? Purging is a repeated uh, kind of clearing of data, like rewriting the data with zeros or ones. So that is a cycle. So that is data purging. So data gets in when it goes in the archival storage. After that archival storage, it can be uh, removed and then it can move into the destruction. So destruction generally, when especially in the context of cloud, you cannot go and destroy the because that is not an option which is available. You cannot go and destroy the hard disk because you do not even have the access to the data center. So because the data center is under the control of cloud service provider. So what you do is either you use purging or you will use crypto sharing, where you kind of encrypt the data and then destroy the key. So that is one of the methods for destroying the data in the cloud. Okay, very good response. So till now, one and B. Couple of more questions. Okay, question three is for how long can academic records be maintained? So, for example, some of you might have done a thesis or written a paper. So once your paper has been published and it is there, so what do you think like is it has to be retained for infinite period? What is the time frame it should be retained? Yeah, so this is more related to depending on the regulatory the jurisdiction. What is the regulatory requirement? For example, it will be governed by UGC rules or it will be governed by AICT rules that this data has to be returned for so and so time. So that will be more dependent on the jurisdiction and regulatory requirements. But generally, academic records will be retained for long. So answer will be here D, that is the retention period will be defined by jurisdiction and regulatory requirements because there is no long as the organization wants to keep them. So because this data retention is something which has to be aligned with the jurisdiction, the regulatory requirements, because ultimately data retention also comes at a cost. That is, you're paying for the storage. So it has to be like done only till the point of time till the data retention is required. So here, the most relevant or the most appropriate answer will be D, and the retention period will be defined by sovereignty, whatever wherever you're storing the data. So that data will be under that particular regulation, that particular geography group. Then finally, question number 4. So which one is the secure data lifecycle comprises 6 phases? What are they? Any guesses? So just now we discussed this: create, store, use, share, archive, and destroy. So this will be the option B: create, store, use, share. Okay. Yeah, this is fourth is B, is for sure. The correct answer will be B. First is you create the data, then you store, then use, share, archive, and destroy. For question number 4, the correct option is B. Okay, with end of this presentation, now next is obviously the most interesting part: questions and suggestions. So, like users training the organization around security is a very important step in ensuring the confidentiality or ensuring the CIA triad. So we need to create more awareness and practice general security hygiene around those security basic principles. So that goes a long way in uh, strengthening the security posture of any organization or any institution. So please go ahead, like, okay, or I can hand over to the anchor. Like, you can ask, please invite anyone, any questions or any in the chat.
Is there any question from the participants? So if there is no questions or any doubt from the participant, we can close this session by thanking Dr. Saurabh Dixit, who is a good friend of mine from, we know each other from last 25 years and work together. So you can mail to me if for any doubt I can forward it to Dr. Saurabh, or you can mail to him. I will share his email ID regarding any questions or any doubt.
Yeah, please do not hesitate if you have any doubts, any questions around data security, because this is a very pertinent, as I mentioned, like cloud is almost everywhere, and we have more and more uses of cloud because of the various advantages. And everyone is, in fact, using the cloud whenever using the uh, OpenAI or the large language models. Most of them are built on cloud. And when you talk about building the cloud, so also need to ensure that we have the security controls around them. So we have something called responsible AI. So AI is there, but we need to be responsible around that. That means before sharing any data with ChatGPT, you should be conscious that you're not sharing the data which is PI nature. Because what happens is ChatGPT will start sharing that data in their own model. That means your data will become testing data. That means your personal data will start getting used in training that model. So before sharing the data, it should be either you use those tools in the enterprise mode, so that uh, that is something you have some controls around that. Otherwise, again, data confidentiality can be an issue when you're using it in a way which is not very responsible. So, okay, I think we are done with. So, once again, I thank Dr. Arun Kumar Singh and the organizers and the computer as well as all the participants for attending this session and really giving me an opportunity. It has been a really good experience for me to interact with the participants. And please do share your comments, any suggestions, or any questions if you have, and the roles around how you can build if you have any, for example, career goals around cloud and data security.
Thank you, sir, for such an enlightening and informative session. Your blend of technical depth and real world industry experience in cybersecurity have truly added a lot of value to this faculty development program. Thank you for sharing your valuable time with us. It was a complete privilege to have you with us today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you.
We can restart the next session by 7:30. So you can take rest for 10 minutes because the next speaker is sitting with me in my office. Although this is online FDP, but he is sitting with me and takes session from my office itself. So thank you all for actively participating in the quiz of Dr. Saurabh Dixit. So thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, once again, you for taking a very nice session. We can stop and restart at 7:30.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Welcome back everyone. Let us begin with second session of day 5. It is my pleasure to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Manish Tiwari, Associate Professor, Electronics and Communication Branch at MNIT Allahabad. Dr. Tiwari has extensive teaching and research experience in the domains of signal processing, embedded systems, and artificial neural networks. Under his supervision, 5 PhD theses, 35 MTech theses have been successfully completed, and currently 4 PhD and 3 MTech theses are in progress. He has published a substantial amount of research papers in international journals of high repute, along with several conference publications that have contributed significantly to contemporary research advancements. Additionally, he has authored book chapters with Springer, supporting a wide research community across the globe. Dr. Tiwari also holds copyright and patent in the area of ASIC implementation of artificial neural networks, reflecting the practical impact and innovation behind his research. His current research interests include multidimensional systems and signal processing, real time structural realization of multidimensional filters, artificial neural networks, embedded systems, and digital design. We are delighted to have him with us today and look forward to a deeply technical and insightful session. With great respect, I now invite Dr. Manish Tiwari to deliver his technical session.
So am I audible to all?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay. Very good evening to all the participants and volunteers and supporters. Thank you very much for joining me in this session at this time. That too in the evening at 7:30. I know it's a tough time for everyone, but thank you very much. So is my screen visible? My title slide? Okay. So the topic is high-speed multidimensional filters for real-time high-speed wireless communication applications. So basically, a variety of things are included in this presentation. However, it primarily focuses on the real-time realization of multidimensional filter, and particularly digital filter. So first, how this research and work has been initiated. So going ahead, when I was working on the filter architectures, so at the time, 5G technology and era has started, and we could realize the impact of 5G on the network speed. So immediately, it was evident to us what this kind of technology is going to create. So very high speed, very high performance, more real-time high definition sharing, etc. was primary feature. So depending upon that, various applications have also been arise. So at that time, I was also working on some technology of UAV for real-time coordinate locations for some pollution control. And at that time, I faced some problem with the devices, with the filters that I was having. So that has motivated me to design my own filter that is capable of performing operations at very high speed so that things can be done in the real time. There is no lag because processing time is usually high. So advent of 5G was something like a dream made true. That network speed was very high, connectivity was very good. So with that motivation, I have started some problem for me that the filter will be realizable in the real time, and at the same time, it will be feasible, practically possible, and cost effective. And not only that, the things will be verified on the industry standard tool. So later on, I will show some results that are verified on the industry standard tools. And all these things which I'm going to present are some work of 2.5 years that we have been doing. So primarily it was motivated the need by the need of very high speed communication and processing speed to match with those high speed transmission in the real time. So let us go ahead. So let me see. Yeah. So some introduction I have compiled over here that particularly digital filter is required in the communication system. And since we are concerned here with the wireless communication systems, so I have mentioned that it is playing very vital role in the wireless communication system. Some area I have also included channel equalization, noise and interference suppression, pulse shaping, modulation, demodulation, signal quality, space-time domains, etc. So a number of things are there. So what we require in the filter, that a signal is received and we perform certain amount of mathematics on it so that desired response can be obtained. And at the same time, unwanted things can be removed so that transmission and reception is very good. Now, at this time, it is just customary to recall that all the signal processing architectures or operations that we studied in the digital signal processing are multiply and accumulate. All the formula you can recall, like convolution, which is the basic operation, is nothing but multiply two signals and then add with the previous result. So this is what we call multiply and accumulate. So at the heart of every digital filter is a MAC unit, multiply and accumulate unit. So this is the heart of digital filter, every digital filter that is realized in the real time. However, processing is required. So in the next slide, we will see what is the severity of this unit. It has to multiply large number of signal samples, then it has to add it. So continuously it has to work, always on the toe. And then it occupies more power. And if I'm designing an IC, then large amount of chip area is required by the MAC operation. So if I want certain amount of visibility and practically usable, an optimization is required so that things can be available with the minimum cost, with the minimum power. And when I'm considering UAV, and if my filter is going to be connected there, then it should be power efficient because UAVs are having battery power supply. They are not having AC mains. So power optimization is a primary requirement. And since they are flying objects, so as long as possible, they have to be very lighter. So a smaller chip area is going to help. So optimization is required. So it is not that design is not present, realizable designs are present, but having these optimization criteria is making the job very, very difficult. And efficient digital filters, which is just a consequence, is required for real-time processing application. Means whenever we are getting the data in the real time, responses should be generated in the real time. So ASIC design of such kind of digital filter is very, very relevant. In the past, they have proved to be very efficient in providing very high throughput, power efficiency, and a smaller chip area. So size is reduced to a significant magnitude. So ASIC design is very useful for such kind of applications. So nowadays, instead of going for software solutions, such kind of ASIC solutions are very, very popular simply because of their nature of providing very higher throughput and availability of these ICs at the lower cost. So just to have a quick background, I am putting to the basic equation of digital filters. I will not go to much of the mathematics here. There is much more mathematics coming ahead. So this is the basic, first one is the basic FIR filter.
Sir, your slide is not moving, sir.
It is not moving there. Okay, let me share it again. Uh, just a moment. So now it is visible.
Yes, sir. It's visible now.
Yeah, simple equation of FIR and IR filters are there.
Yes. Yes, sir. It's visible, sir.
Yeah, okay. So as you can see FIR filter, uh, what is present is a math unit. As I was saying earlier, x of k is multiplied by h of n minus k. It is multiplication. And then followed by a summation. First, multiply and accumulate with the previous result. For all the values of k starting from 0 to n minus 1. And that too for all the values of small n, varying from 0 to any value which is present in the system to generate real-time operation. So you can see that calculation demand is very high. Highly computationally demanding systems are there when we talk about the digital filters. However, a FIR filter is having finite impulse response. H of n is referred as impulse response. It is the output of a filter when input is del of n. That's it. That is what we mean by impulse response. It is characterizing the filter. Or alternately saying, H of n is the one which is referred as filter coefficient. So we will be playing with this H of n in our later part of design because this is the filter coefficient and we can do many more things. There is something called IIR filter, infinite impulse response filter, in which H of n can have infinite number of points. But in the computer system, we cannot have infinite number of points. So there is a provision of feedback. And due to this, the filters may become unstable. So in the lower part of equation, first summation I is equal to n, coefficient pi is referring to the forward path, and second summation j is equal to 1 to n with the coefficient dj is referring to the feedback path. Now when we compare, what we find that for the similar problem, usually FIR has got higher order, whereas IIR has got lower order. Due to the higher order, FIR is computationally complex, whereas lower order makes IIR less computationally complex. However, one advantage is that FIR is having linear phase. Not always having, but it is very easy to have linear phase. And it is very important when we are referring to the live TV transmission, live video transmission. So phase has to be preserved. So in the many such real-time application, we don't have any option but to go for FIR filter. And remember that FIR filter is going to have large value of order. So if for the same problem, IIR is having 3, order 3, FIR may have the order of 10. This is the difference. So some realization structures I have shown just to recall. And one more thing we have to remember is that since FIR filter is having finite impulse response, they are unconditionally stable. Means we don't have to worry about their stability in the real-time operation. So let's have some realization structures. Now this slide is visible. Some structures are there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So these are famous direct form 1, direct form 2. So even though it appears to be very simple, but direct form 1 is the legendary structure, and you will find that in most of the real-time situation, it is this structure which is used to realize the real-time filter. And the order in any arm is number of delay elements. The left-hand side x of n, it is having 3 delay elements. On the right-hand side, towards y of n, it is having 3 delay elements. So order of the system is 3. So order is number of the delay elements, which is primarily dictating how many multipliers, how many adders will be required to generate the output. That creates the complexity. So if order is increasing, you can see from here that computational complexity will be very high. So in case of FIR, order is 10. So 10 memory elements, 10 multiplier elements, adder elements will be required. So there is a problem of resources and computational complexity. And there is something called transpose structure. It is very useful in VLSI implementation because it is organized as cell and testing is very easy. So just I have used all these structure for the recalling purposes. So let us go to our real problem. So as a special case of multidimensional filter, I have taken 2D, two-dimensional. The design criteria which we are using for 2D is extended for M dimension. So it is widely used in image and video processing because they are having spatial and time variation. Finite set of coefficients are there in the filter and which is applied over the entire input and required output is generated. So MIMO channel equalization is an example of space-time filtering, which is used primarily to suppress multipath feeding and intersymbol interference. Similarly, some smart antennas where special filtering is required in the XY direction, 2D FIR filtering is one of the best solution. Similarly, OFDM time frequency processing filters are also there. They are also one of the best solution. Some Doppler spread, noise reduction, frequency selective fading, etc. are the primary applications of 2D filters. So how a 2D filter can be defined? That is the primary question. So here is one 2D filter. A simple equation of 2D filter is there. And I'm sorry if some of the equations are little appearing a bit complex. However, the first summation is basically I have drawn bigger just to show you that yes, there are two summations. Okay. So since there are two directions, so I and j are two summations. For every value of I, all the values of j has to be connected so that output ymn can be given. So the complexity of such system is very, very high. How to define? A 2D filter is a filter in which information propagates in two independent directions. Remember that. These directions are going to be independent, they are not dependent. In 1D, it is only one independent direction. That is time in general. Okay? And the filtering action is performed on both the directions independently. Now, we can see one simple realization structure direct form 1 in the next slide. So this is the type of structure you can see Z1 inverse, Z2 inverse. Z1 inverse is the delay in the I direction, Z2 inverse is the delay in the Z direction. And now all the filter coefficients are H of 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, and so on. So this is a very simple filter for order 4. Now you can see in this picture how many multipliers, adders, delay elements are required. So computational complexity, you can simply observe what it could be. And when I am talking for the real-time application, order of the filter is going to be 8, 16, 24, and so on. So very, very highly demanding architecture has to be there. So what to do in this case? Because the simple problem is that if I want very high speed, power consumption will be more. And if I want low power consumption, speed will be less. So there is trade-off between the two. So what we do is we go for alternate method, indirect method. So very beautiful methods are there. FI path. I'm sorry, some spelling mistake is there. PARK has to be there. So typing mistake is there. So they have given a DA-based reconfiguration filter. What is DA? Distributive arithmetic. Means arithmetic operation is present, but it is distributed in the various stages of processing element. So this reduces the burden of processing. So this paper simply provides a very high throughput approach and reconfigurable implementation. The moment I say reconfigurable, that means I am able to change the filter coefficient depending upon my requirement. Means h of n can be changed. Actually, what happens when we are designing the dedicated ICs? Filter coefficients are fixed. We don't have any option to change them. Whereas the design presented here is reconfigurable, means we have option and easily changeable filter coefficient options. That is why we are calling reconfigurable realization. Okay. So in this work, shared LUT design was proposed. So what do we understand by LUT? Anybody can answer me? What is mean by LUT? Yes? Any guess? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir. Yes, sir.
So LUT is basically mean by as lookup table. It is a very innovative concept in software. And that concept is taken here in the hardware realization. Let's say I have to find out the square of a decimal digit, 0 to 9. So one method is to multiply. Let's say if I have to multiply, find out the square of 3, then 3 into 3, 9. That is one method. Second method is, what I will do is, that I will, on a paper, I will note down square of 0 to 9. Square of 0, square of 1, square of 2, square of 3, and so on. In every line, I will write the square. The moment I am asked, what is the square of 3? I will go to this my paper and go to line number 3. 9 is written there. I will respond, sir, 9 is the answer. If someone asks me, what is the square of 8? I will go to line number 8. 64 is written there. I will read and reply, 64 is the answer. That is what we mean by the lookup table. So in the software, it is primarily used to reduce the time. The same concept is utilized here also. Multiplication always takes a lot of time. So instead, an indirect approach is used. One advantage of this approach is chip area can be reduced, which is occupied by the multiplier. Multiplier is a very heavy design. Repeated addition algorithm, Booth algorithm, modified Booth algorithm, etc. are present. However, they are all employing certain amount of data processing unit, control unit, buffering unit, bus unit for the purpose of multiplication. So chip area is very high. And if I apply one multiplier for each section in the filter which I have shown here, मैं आप इसे show कर रहा हूँ. For each multiplication in this FIR filter architecture, you can assume how much chip area it will require. And since multiplier has to work continuously, they will continuously draw the current from the power supply. So power dissipation is very high, may not be suitable for the UAV type of applications. So use of LUT drastically remove our dependence from the multipliers. So basically, there are several papers which are utilizing the distributive arithmetic to remove the multipliers and providing an efficient design of FIR filters. So a few, some glimpse of the distributive arithmetic, because we are also going to use this arithmetic primarily. Okay. So what we do is that we apply the distributive arithmetic to the data involving the bit slice of the input. Then we are pre-computing a partial sum, like what we have done in the table, writing the table. These partial sums are already computed and stored in a RAM location, memory location, and that is what we call as lookup table. And whenever we apply the new input set, these are used as the memory address for these lookup tables, and appropriate output can be generated. So in this way, multiplication is reduced to the one clock operation. Number one. So throughput is highly improved. At the same time, since this operation involves only register and adder, however, a number of registers are slightly increased, but overall gain in the chip area is very good. And due to this, power dissipation is highly improved. And since only one clock cycle operation is there, so throughput is highly improved. So if we apply distributive arithmetic in the design of filter properly, we can have a very good filter architecture which is realizable in the real time. Now coming on to the block filter. Now, what is a block filter? Normally, every filter takes one input, process it, and delivers the output. So one input is taken at a time and one output is delivered at a time. That is what we do whenever we talk about filter. However, to support high speed operations, what we do? We take a block of input, not one input, a block of input, and that block of input is processed parallelly. Thereafter, block of output is presented. So input is block of sample, output is block of sample. So more than one samples are processed at a time. So throughput is highly improved. However, at the cost of power dissipation. So since very high speed is obtained, very high throughput is obtained, so slight expense of power dissipation we can afford. However, when we go for UAV type of application, where battery supplies are present, continuously working filter which are consuming lot of power is not good. So it is quite reasonable to optimize such kind of filters to farthest extent possible. At the same time, ensuring that highest possible speed is present. Now here, as in the bottom, you can see that till now, till now means till some 6 to 7 years ago, we could find only one 2D block FIR paper where processing was done, even though it was block processing, but operation was bit serial. Means bits are available serially at the output. So overall advantage of block processing was diminished to certain extent as far as throughput is concerned. Now, how I could find it? So it is very dramatic to say that only one paper 6 to 7 years ago, or from not 6 to 7, I think 8 to 9 years ago, before Corona, it was published, and I was the author of that paper, so I know very well what was there. So that filter architecture was not fitting for the requirement of 5G and UAV technology. So I was forced to come out with an architecture which supersedes this architecture. So one simple formulation I will show you. This block FIR filter, again I am taking the same equation 1, where Yk is the kth output, means K plus 1 block output. So every time in this filter, whenever we talk about the block output. So Yk means K plus 1th block output. So what all we have to generate is for block output. Now here in the equation 4, you can see equation 4 is basically providing you the filter coefficient Hij. Now what distributive arithmetic technique requires? It requires that all the data elements should be present in 2's complement format. So this equation 4 is nothing but representing every sample of h of n, means h of ij, in 2's complement format. And thereafter, this 2's complement format is given to the original equation of block filter. We arrive at equation 5. And when we put all the values there, we finally get equation 7, in which output k plus 1 block output is obtained with the help of these many block of inputs. In the bigger square bracket, whatever you are seeing is the bit, the h of n coefficient, means impulse response coefficient. Suffix b means binary bit, and the sample number, input sample number. So block of samples are there, and that are processed with the help of one particular bit only. That is the advantage. In order to have such kind of architecture, the order n, which is just written above the equation 7, and for example, n is equal to 8 I have taken, it is split in two parts, 4 into 2. So first consideration is m is equal to 4 and p is equal to 2. When I am obtaining in this way, this is the equation I am obtaining, and advantage is that every Hij can be represented with the help of a single bit. So my architecture is supposed to be very good. So likewise, partial product can be calculated from this equation. So now you can see one special unit we have designed that is referred as RPPG, Reconfigurable Partial Product Generator Unit. Now, why I am calling it reconfigurable? Because this is having simply register banks, nothing else. Only register banks it is having. So essentially, it is making a RAM unit. Since it is RAM unit, easily programmable. And at the output of it are multiplexers. And select input of multiplexer is coming from the register bank and h of n bits. That's it. So since filter coefficient is taken only in terms of bits, only few bits are required. So our architecture is going to be very, very efficient. So this reconfigurable partial product unit is going to be the heart of our filter. Now, due to some copyright requirement, I'm not going in very detailed inside. Now, using this reconfigurable partial product unit, the main processing unit is octane. So you can see RP is 0 to P minus 1. So M cross P has to be there for 8, 4 cross 2. So 2 RPPG will be there. If I'm going for 4 cross 4, order 16, it will be 4 RPPGs. And all the output of RPPGs is given to pipeline adder tree. So pipeline adder tree is primarily used to improve the throughput to a greater extent. And as you can see, at the output of adder tree, B is 8. B means bit length. So it is not bit serial in nature. Always at a time, 8 bit appears at the output. So meaning is throughput is now 8 times higher than the earlier proposed architecture. Now you can see at the input side, input is coming and we have used a SIPO shift register. Serial input, parallel output shift register. It is a simple shift register. So basically why we have used here is because in many systems we have seen that circuitry receives samples one by one. And of course, in the real-time system, samples are received one by one, and it has to be parallel uh, process. So this shift register is distributing the sample number appropriately to the RPPG unit. However, the system is whole filter is designed in such a way, whenever required, you can simply remove the SIPO shift register, and the whole system will work as it is. Now, with the help of this, we have made certain amount of optimization. Even though the circuitry appears very good, very efficient for high speed, we have verified it mathematically, but we again investigated this whole filter that if certain level of optimization is further possible, and fortunately, we could. So one example we have seen here. So you can see that these many, the shaded portion are the common samples. And these are for n is equal to 8. Now, two columns are present because p is equal to 2. Four rows are, four entries is present in every column because m is equal to 4. So 4 into 4, 16 samples are there which are common. That can be removed. Meaning is to say, the number of registers here in the register bank can be drastically reduced by the order of n square. So after this, we have optimized the RPPG block. SIPO register is there and input is given to the all the serial input parallel output register. And then parallel adder tree is there, parallel outputs are generated. So complete block of sample is present at once in a single clock cycle. So this improves the throughput very, very significantly. So now you can realize what is the power of this architecture. And this is the final proposed architecture that we have proposed for Lth order. Order is L. So L is the block size. So here for the simplicity, we have also taken it to be L. So this is the complete architecture. Now after all these things, what we need to do is we have to mathematically verify first that yes, all our mathematical models are correct and they are giving improved performance. So what to do? Go back to the previous peers, whatever they have presented, compare with them. So at this point, one particular paper I would like to mention, in the table you can see the paper given by Khu. So he is a legendary author. All my studies and my research has been motivated by the research paper of Mr. Khu. He has written beautifully explained everything, and in fact paved the way of research for two-dimensional or multi-dimensional filters in the real time. So I suggest that those who are interested should go to this paper. Then B.K. Mohanty is one of the contributors in this area. Prashant is my PhD student. This was the paper, only paper available on the block FIR till now, because the research which I am showing is still under review, so not available till now. So what we have done is we have made a comparison mathematically, and we have shown here that yes, on these parameters, throughput, multiplier, adder, resistor, our proposed design is much superior. Meaning of all these symbols might be difficult, but when this paper will appear, you will be able to see. Okay, by till then, you can refer to the paper of Prashant. It is available in the circuit systems and signal processing. From 2017 or 18, it was published. You can refer that. And N is order of filter. Okay, N means order in I direction. So if ij is the direction, so total order is n square. That's why number of multipliers is n square. Now, after mathematically verifying is, we have verified our design on the industry standard too. So we have requested TSMC to provide their design library. So 45 nanometer design library we have got from the TSMC. 90 nanometer design library we have got from the TSMC. 180 nanometer design library we have received from the TSMC. Our idea was to verify our design on all possible technologies. So 180 nanometer is most commonly available. So here the results in the table are primarily shown on that. However, in our original research paper, it is available for all. So you can see that on the right hand side, percentage EDP, percentage GPU, percentage throughput. So in our proposed structure in the paper, we have proposed two type of structures, basically depending upon M cross P, 2 cross 4, 4 cross 2. You can see we are having an improvement in ADP of 9.56, whereas improvement in energy per output is 57.76. Now, why it is 9.56 only? Because we are processing all the bits parallelly, whereas the comparison paper, Prashant paper, is processing only one bit. So it appears to be very small, but actually it is very large when you see that in the main paper it is only one bit, now here it is n bit. Energy per output is significantly reduced. So only 57.76% energy is required. So subtle amount of saving is there. However, observe the improvement in the throughput, which was the major objective of the paper. 389.75% the improvement in output. And why it has been obtained? Because all the papers, whether it is one dimensional or two dimensional or anything, or any technology, they were all presented with the bit serial technique. Only one bit presented at the output. Whereas this technique, which we are showing here or discussing here, is presenting b bits at a time. Only for the simplicity, I have taken b is equal to 8. So 8 bits are processed at the same time, because filter coefficient is taken to be the 8 bit. Why I have taken 8 bit is a very special reason. I will show you a little later. Now you can see 4 cross 2, only 2.94% improvement in the ADP, but you can see the significant amount of improvement in energy per output and significant amount of improvement in the throughput. Now, all this comparison was for order 8. N is equal to 8 means in I directional 8, in J directional 8. That is the meaning. Now let's see for order 16, which is one of the real-time interest, real-time filter. In this case, block size is also taken as 16, means 16 blocks of input will be processed at the same time. Now you can see, when I M cross P is equal to 2 cross 8, the composite structure which I have defined. So percentage ADP is improved by 55.17%. Very, very significant improvement. Improvement in the energy per output, high. And of course, designed for the higher throughput, so 320.15. However, when you see the 4 cross 4, A similar type of performance is also observed. So here, the simple thing is why for n is equal to 8, such kind of significant improvement was not visible, but for n is equal to 16, this significant improvement is there. It is simply because the complicated technique gives you the advantage only and only when things are complicated. If you apply complicated solution techniques to the simple problems, you are not going to get much advantages. So having n is equal to 8 is a simple filter. You can have a simple solution for that. However, the complicated technique like this, which we have shown here, must have complicated situation to meet the requirement. So percentage throughput, you can see very high throughput, and here one column is there, you can see throughput megahertz, 110.74, 885.44, 1032.25. So 885, 1032 are the throughput in the megahertz that we have obtained with everything same, all the conditions same as in the Prashant. Okay? And all the parameters are estimated when we have assumed that synthesis is done at 20 megahertz frequency. So this was verified by the synthesis on the industry standard tool that yes, the design is feasible. So that is why we have done the synthesis with all possible technologies that we could receive. However, to make ourselves sure or to make myself sure from where I have started, I didn't stop here. So one thing which I have contributed, I suppose that it is a major contribution in this area. What I have done is I have taken the image and passed through this hardware. So one actual image was taken and passed through the hardware. So now you see what is there. Now you can see, sir, it is the same thing we are seeing in the mini paper. So now many questions are going to be answered here. First, I told you earlier that we have taken only 8 bits for the illustration. Why? Because I wanted to show this example. So there is a justification why I am taking 8 bit here for this image. You see, in the today's era, having only 8 bit for the filter coefficient doesn't sound good. Okay, but for this image processing application, I have taken it. Now you see, whenever we are taking an image, we are processing it, we expect that actual image can be recovered. That is what is our expectations. So what we mean is that image is given and noise is removed. So first of all, what we have done is we have taken a very high definition image of Lena, which is shown in A, which is not exactly a high definition image. That file was somewhere around 8 MB. It was a colored image. Now we had to introduce the noise to check whether our hardware is working or not. So what we have done, we thought that instead of introducing a variety of known amount of noise, let us introduce unknown noise. So first we have done is we have converted this high definition image to grayscale image. So part A is 256 cross 256 gray image. So a very small amount of noise is added here. Original informations are lost. But we didn't stop here. After that, in the part B, we have mapped this Lena image in lookup table. And all the entries of this lookup table are only 8 bit. So now you can see the amount of noise I have introduced. Just to make sure that in the real-time system, the hardware is working. So first high definition image, then grayscale, a small amount of noise is added. Thereafter, only 8 bit lookup table implementation. So part B, you can see it is totally distorted image. Now this distorted image is given to our filter. And we say that filter coefficient was image smoothing application. Thereafter, after filtering, this is the part C that we have obtained. And now you can see the efficiency of the filter. That yes, even though it is a complicated structure, and we have introduced a number of unknown noise. Because my desire was that if it has to work perfectly in the system, unknown noises should be there. I should not know it in advance. Now we have calculated SSIN, similarity index. Everything which is very close to 1 is very good filtering action. So here I have received 0.9931 is the similarity index. So very good for the filter structure. Peak signal to noise ratio 36.84, very high value. Means our hardware structure is performing very well in all the real time systems. So in this way we have tested for speed and filtering action, just to make sure that whatever we are going to propose is feasible in the real time. However, due to certain limitation and some publication issues, I'm not showing you the real-time video processing here. That we will see sometimes after the publication of my paper. But right now, I think this is sufficient, and I have shown you that how we should choose a research and how we should verify. So, well, that's all from my side. Thank you very much for listening me patiently. Thanks a lot. Over to the Arun sir. And any questions, if at all?
Any question from the participants? They can put forward.
So we all are sitting here in Sir Kevin. So any question from any participant?
One question. We are using utilities for beauty, for the architecture, and it will take some.
If you go continue. So one question I have received, that we are using the LUDs for multiplier-less architectures, and it will take much memory for larger calculations. How can we reduce the size of LUDs? Basically, distributed arithmetic technique is very nice in that way that not only you can find out the symmetries in the LUTs, if you can recall, I have used architecture like M cross P. So M cross P has been used primarily to obtain a certain amount of symmetry among the lookup tables, so that not only number of entries in the lookup table is reduced significantly, but lookup table sharing is also done. So one lookup table was as it is used at various stages. So that's why total number of registers, which amounts to the memory, is reduced. I hope this can do this.
Is any further question? What tools basically see on certain what tools are used to reduce the noise?
So, if we, as far as tool is concerned, I will say the only tool to remove the noise was our filter. However, my understanding is that You wanted to know how this noise is reduced using the filter. So basically, calculation of filter coefficient ensures that noise is removed. So the one filter which I have taken was image smoothing filter, in which all the coefficients are 111. So it is 16 cross 16 matrix with all ones. So it is a image smoothing application. So we can have very simple filter design methods. You can say that image exchange algorithm is there for FIR filters, through which you can calculate all these filter coefficients. There is no other tools are used as far as this architecture is considered. Once the coefficient is loaded, the filter is working, hardware is working as it is. Hardware is realized using the FPGA to check its feasibility in the real-time application. So any other question? I think so. Okay, so if later on you have any question, you can post it to sir, and I will definitely love to answer all those questions. That will also increase my database and my knowledge. Okay. And for extensive study, you can refer to the paper of Prashant present in the circuit systems and signal processing.
So now we have almost completed 8 sessions, and only 3 sessions are remaining, and that on day 6. Tomorrow the timing is different from the usual days. It is at start as 2 to 3:30, 3:30 to 5, and 5 to 6:30. 3 sessions are there, and after that, in a half an hour, quiz will be there, and a feedback session from the participants and valedictory. So that is all from day 5. Thank you for your active participation. Maybe we can close today's session.
Thank you, sir, for such an informative and detailed session. We truly appreciate the depth and clarity you brought to today's session. Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable time. With this, we formally conclude day 5, and let us connect tomorrow positively at 2 p.m.